The headline from the Daily Mail article by Alice Murphy, linked, says it loud and clear. Study calls for females to have a shorter working week than men because many are on the brink of dangerous burnout. That's right. 3 Australian scholars, women and feminists all, have done a study concluded that the work women do, the soft kind of work, generally not the kind resulting in workplace death or injury, is just too hard on them. They need to slow down and work less. Their final estimation was that women needed to work 34 hours a week while men work 47, because, work isn't as hard on men as it is on women. It's another version of feminist equality best not presented to people who are sipping coffee in front of their computer. In order to be fair to my criticism of the headline, I'm going to work the text of the entire article into this talk. I don't want you to miss anything, starting with the piece's 4 subheader bullet points. More women are experiencing dangerous burnouts at work, it says. At once a nod to the reality that too much work is bad for you, and equally an acknowledgement that the authors didn't give a shit about it until it started affecting women. Next, the subheader says that mental health is the #1 disease affecting Aussie women in 2018, confirming what we've known about them for a long time, though I hardly think this is limited to women down under. I wonder what it would feel like for men if their lives were insulated and protected enough that heart disease and a slew of other stress-related diseases had to take a back seat to their mental health. Oh well, no matter. We'll never find that out. Moving on, the next bullet point says that experts push for a restructure of traditional working hour limits for women. Okay, let's call this bullshit what it is. The experts are pushing for men to take the burden of working off women and place it on their own already overloaded backs. Restructure? My white male ass. This is a push for more legislated chivalry, a demand to make men more disposable than they already are, and given the sorry state of Australian men, it'll just be a matter of time before they get their way. The final bullet point of the subheader says, and I quote, "Women must be fairly compensated for extra care duties, researchers say." Really? By whom? By the men working 47 hours a week at jobs that kill, injure, cause disease, and diminish life, while the porcelain princesses work 34 hours sitting in air-conditioned offices, sipping Starbucks, and emailing each other about what happened on The Bachelorette last night. Of course, that is what they mean. It is precisely what they want. And as we see from the start of the body of this article, Alice Murphy wants to help them get it. For centuries, women have been experts at juggling their relationships, careers, children, health, and home all at once, says Murphy, as though men have spent the last few millennia puffing cigars and watching football. The weight of maintaining this balancing act has increased exponentially over the last 2 decades, to the point that more modern women than ever are reporting feelings of exhaustion, anxiety, and depression. In fact, many are on the brink of serious burnout. Allow me to stop there and ask if I can be the first to wonder out loud who gives a fuck. Women outlive men by 5 years. They are less prone to stress-related disease, largely because they have less stress. They constitute 7% of workplace deaths versus 93% for men. They are allowed and encouraged to choose the least demanding professions that leave them the most personal options and flexibility and result in the least possible financial responsibility for home life. And they are now finding that even the comparatively cushy, less demanding paths they choose still come with a cost. And they want to do what about it? Complain? Whine? Feel picked on? Work even less than they already do? Got news for you, cupcakes. Work is hard. So my advice? Pop a fucking Xanax and be thankful you don't have a real job. You know, the kind of job that can get you killed. Be thankful you can whine to your coworkers about Janet in accounting being a bitch, instead of how you lost a hand setting chokes in a logging camp, or how you got tangled in a crabbing line and got yanked overboard into frigid waters and 30-foot seas. I just can't wait to see what Alice Murphy has to say next. A study published by the Australian National University found that the healthy working week for women should be limited to 34 hours compared to 47 hours for men, Murphy reports. These findings reflect the outside of work hours that women lose to traditional domestic responsibilities and caregiving duties. However, a randomized survey of 8,000 Aussies found that more than 66% of full-time working adults spend more than 40 hours a week on the job. This means that a huge proportion of women are operating at a consistent disadvantage to their male counterparts. Okay, now let me see if I get this straight. Women had this massive movement called feminism, demanding equality and challenging the entire world to accept the supposedly undeniable truth that women can do anything men can do, or as former President Obama said, do it better and do it in heels. But they can't even keep up with home life and a full-time job that isn't half as demanding or dangerous as what has always been the case in the lives of men. All this despite the fact that men already work nearly an hour a day on average more than women linked. And their cop-out for this is what? They're burdened with doing the dishes? With changing diapers? Yeah, that's real back-breaking shit there, ladies. And of course, in all these talking points about how women are done hard with domestic chores, they don't count the time men spend doing skilled and manual labor as upkeep on homes and cars. That stuff doesn't count, nor does men's position in the home as default bodyguard. It goes to reinforce a core belief in feminist doctrine. The only experience that matters is women's experience. That kind of mentality is the only way you can possibly justify the soft misogyny of low expectations on women that feminism represents. Let's move on. The real-life impact of these findings are concerning in terms of female mental health, warns ANU lead researcher Dr. Huan Din. Long working hours erode mental and physical health because it leaves less time to eat well and look after oneself properly, the expert told Women. Women, by the way, is spelled WHIMN, a worker's website, the title of which strangely resembles the word whine at first glance, but I digress. Anyway, Murphy goes on. Because of the additional demands placed on women, Dr. Din says that it is impossible for women to work the long hours often expected by employers unless they compromise their health. In other words, welcome to the man's world, you insufferable little whining idiots. I'll resist the urge to go on a major rant here, but I have to tell you I personally had a bellyful of feminists who scream out of one side of their mouth about how women aren't credited for their capabilities alongside men, and out of the other side of their mouths about how women are helpless little snowflakes who are one reasonable demand away from melting. I spent a few years in younger days doing heavy-haul truck driving, pulling massively big and heavy loads of oil-filled equipment up into the hills of Colorado and Wyoming. Now, there were plenty of times I would have liked to speak to my employers about how the brutal physical work, exposure to diesel and other chemicals, grueling work hours, and sometimes ridiculously dangerous conditions had, how did Dr. Din put it, compromised my health. Surely that doesn't compare, though, to a woman who spends 8 hours answering a phone at work and then has to come home and vacuum a rug. So what is the solution, asks Murphy, as though she might not have the feminist answer quite handy. Experts, she touts, recommend that women should work shorter hours in order to compensate for the unpaid jobs they do every single day. Which experts would that be, Alice? The three feminists that pulled this research out of their asses? Why, yes, she answers with the following text. In order to achieve gender equality, working hours must be lowered. Now, I have to stop right there for a moment to simply point out to you that you heard that right. In order to achieve gender equality, women need to work less than men. You heard it from the experts, no less. Co-researcher at the ANU, Professor Lindahl Strazdins, is deeply concerned about the impact of disproportionate working hours on women's mental health. Once again, let me stop. Citing the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we've already established that women work less hours than men. And we know from an abundance of other statistics that women do far less dangerous, demanding, and stressful work than men. Yet according to feminist experts, women suffer from disproportionate working hours compared to men. Like I said, research pulled straight out of their bonbon-fattened, lazy asses. Murphy continues, if we encourage women to try to attain those work hours, we're basically confronting them with a trade-off between their health and gender equality, Professor Strazdins says. Translation? If we put the same expectations and demands on women that we do on men, even in the context of their already soft employment choices, they'll fold like cheap suits. What is being said in this article by the researchers and by Murphy peddling their solutions is that women are weak and inferior to men, and we need to slide cushions under their soft asses while never sliding the truth in front of their faces. Murphy summarizes this pile of vomit-worthy propaganda by quoting Yu Dan Shi, founder of the executive coaching project Inner Genius, who says that women must take care of their health and mindset and prioritize what they want to achieve rather than what is socially expected of them. You have to have a purpose. Women are brought up trying to constantly improve themselves, and we spent so much time focusing on what we're bad at instead of investing time into the things we do well, Ms. Shi said. In the meantime, Professor Strazdins is calling for fair reward for women who are working close to or above a 38-hour working week. It's going to be a slow and difficult process because it's a major social change, the scientist said. All in favor of a 34-hour working week for women? Now, there was enough bilge in those last few lines to do another dozen talks or so, but I will spare myself the unnecessary exploration of all that insane bullshit about what women actually spend their lives doing. Instead, I'll just offer this as a word of caution and a nudge for you, dear listeners, toward an entrepreneurial life. The 34-hour work week for women, 47 for men, is very likely on its way. Most men are too weak and too stupid to stop it. Most of them will enjoy every day watching women leave work 2 hours before they do for the same money. Like pathetic lemmings, or should I say weasels, they will cheer for their own abuse. You can't help those guys, and personally speaking, you shouldn't want to. Let them rot. They don't have any more of an excuse than the clowns that conjure up these studies and spread them through the mass media like cancer. One more reason to go your own way, gents, especially if you're wise enough to know that you're going your own way means a lot more than just not getting married. And that is it for this talk today. As always, I hope you've enjoyed, even if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.